All right, it's a break. I'm feeling much better. That was amazing. I've never had that before. Never gone hypo before. Bit of sugar, and I'm back. Into it. I have promised you for days another reading from Jacinda, The Untold Stories, an unauthorised biography by David Coven with Rebecca Keeler. Got a nice note from David the other day who said, thanks for promoting the book. You're more than welcome, mate. When we left off, which is a few days ago now, I'd read that excellent passage setting up, what happened in the run-up to and on the day of the Christchurch massacre. Just such a dark day in New Zealand history. And really, I think what the book is saying in general terms is that Jacinda Ardern's response to that was the making of her. It really made her, and it's a very important passage in the book. I'm on page 90, and I'm just going to read a couple of pages to you. Jacinda vowed never to speak the name of the Christchurch killer, and she was good to her word. She said she intended to remember the names of those who were lost, rather than the names of the man who took them. Surprisingly, a number of media outlets took this as an edict to do the same, eschewing the standard journalistic practice of naming an accused killer unless or until a court might suppress it. A week later, some of the media covered the first Friday call to Muslim prayer after the murders, showing footage of non-Muslim police officers donning hijabs to mark the day, echoing the Prime Minister's spontaneous gesture. Oddly, a number of television presenters followed suit. Presumably this was well-intentioned, but at the very least it seemed to be a little baffling. Only a year earlier, the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, had made a cosplaying arse of himself in India by donning a white sherwani with gold threadwork in the hope of impressing his hosts. Was there not a similar cloying aspect to the Antipodean performance? And is it possible by accident or design that Ardern wasn't egging it on a little? The aftermath of the mosque killings also saw her initiate what became known as the Christchurch Call. Firstly, a summit held a couple of months later in Paris. Later, as a full-fledged foundation event, the mission statement talked about eliminating terrorist and violent extremist content online. It also proposed to toughen hate speech laws by introducing much harsher penalties for those who incited or normalised discrimination. And it broadened the definition of hate to include offending a person's sensibilities on religious matters or using words that could bring disabled people into disrepute. These initiatives had their supporters, not everyone. Some felt Ardern was using the tragedy to restrict speech beyond what posed a clear and immediate danger to specific individuals. The political conversation turned to misinformation and disinformation, fuzzy terms that would require greater currency during COVID. To some ears, such terms sounded like an underhand way of suppressing dissent, smacking down those who were merely critical of certain political positions or didn't take a majority view on certain issues. Jonathan Ayling, as the former leader of the Free Speech Union, suggests as much, arguing Ardern's policy approach, like that of other world leaders in similar situations, focused on cracking down on speech rather than doing anything specifically helpful. The proposals offered no practical way to root out potentially dangerous criminals, he believes. News Talk ZB broadcaster Mike Hoskins describes the Christchurch Call as a farce of a joke. In Hoskins' opinion, it was a response to a problem Ardern knew she couldn't fix. And what's your reaction in something that you can't fix, he asked sarcastically. The answer is you make an announcement, make a big headline. I'm travelling to France to have a meeting with Macron, and we are going to call it the Christchurch Call, and we're going to tackle online abuse and hatred. The politician who for a short time became Ardern's opposite number in the National Party, one-time opposition leader Todd Muller, strikes a similar note. Muller believes there was cynicism around the Christchurch Call, which he thinks was more about elevating Ardern's brand. Certainly it didn't harm her political approval figures which prior to Christchurch were at net positive 37% and afterwards rocketed up to 60%. Few people, though, were any the wiser as to how the Prime Minister specifically intended to deal with the problems she'd identified. Not for the first time, Ardern was smothering under the rubric of kindness what ought to have been a sensitive policy debate. This dynamic effectively framed political disagreements not as differences in specifics or principles, but as a lack of compassion or caring. Taken on its own, of course, there's nothing wrong with promoting kindness, denoting as it does benevolence and the consideration of other people's feelings. It's the opposite of being a complete jerk, right? Only a churl could possibly object. Yes, yet as feminist writers like Victoria Smith have pointed out, kindness can also be a way of keeping others in line, according to the case she puts forward in her recent book, Unkind. What Smith dubs just be kindism enables those who make the biggest noise about how kind they are to hog all the public space, while those on the receiving end of their aggressive benevolence have to suck it up in the interests of maintaining social inclusion. And that, my friends, is a great passage because it means cancel culture. And I think in that passage, David Cohen has got to the genesis of what Leo Molloy is suffering today, what the platform suffers at the hands of the BSA. It began after the Christchurch Call, and it began and was supercharged by Jacinda Ardern. It is cancel culture, and it is restrictions on freedom of speech and freedom of thought, and it is tyranny. And I'm going to say the problem is the Christchurch Call is still funded by this government. Luxon committed $50 million to it and to helping Jacinda Ardern out when he became Prime Minister. You fool, Chris Luxon. You absolute fool. Brilliant passage. That is why you should get this book, Jacinda, The Untold Stories. Gems like that where I think, after talking to a lot of people, Cohen managed to say, this is where all the crap from the Veterinary Council or Association comes from. This is where real estate agents who have to do tikanga courses come from. It comes from the tyranny that was imagined and introduced by Jacinda Ardern. Oh, last break.
Tired of paying full price for fabulous fashion? Then stop driving by and